Hello and welcome back to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 32B.
I'm Cam and this is Julie.
Yes, this is the B'rit Hadashah or the New Testament discussion on this week's Torah portion. And it is found in Matthew 12:46 through 13:58. So basically all of 13, which are the parables, the 7 parables that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But we're going to start in 12:46 because I think this small point that he makes here is so vital for us to understand. And while he was still talking to the crowd, see, his mother and brothers stood outside seeking to speak with him. And one said to him, "See, your mother and your brothers are standing outside seeking to speak with you." But he answered and said to the one who spoke to him, "Who is my mother and my brothers?" And having stretched out his hand toward the taught ones, he said, "See, my mother and my brothers, for whoever does the desire of my Father who is in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." This is so vital for us to understand. Okay, first I want to talk about what Yeshua did not do.
Okay.
What Yeshua did not do was chastise them for elevating his mother and brothers above who he was speaking to at the time. That's what he did not do. He did not say, someday you're going to make this into pagan worship and elevate, my mother to a status that I didn't elevate her to, or the Lord didn't elevate her to. But what he did do was he just spoke truth. And he said, look, he put everything in the right order once again. He said, anyone who does the will of my Father in heaven is my mother and my brother and my sister. In other words, we are all brothers and sisters and in one body. And in 50, just the fact that he says his mother and his brother and his sisters are anyone who does the will of his Father, just the fact that he says, my Father in heaven, proves he didn't come on his own will. Then we move down into 13 and we see the famous parables, the 7 parables. He is on the beach, it says in the beginning of 13, and the crowds were pressing. They wanted to hear, so he went out a little ways in a boat and spoke. So it kind of acts like his own little theater.
Yeah, he talked about soil while in water. It's kind of funny.
That is kind of funny. So he starts with his first parable, and we'll just talk about that. We'll just discuss that. Okay. It's the one, the sower and the seed. So you have the seeds representing the word.
Right.
Falling on the different soils. The soils represent disciples, those that fall by the wayside, and those are the ones that they hear it and it doesn't take root. The enemy immediately takes it away. And I think of the people that you tell something to and they act like they want to know, and you tell them and then they're just off to something else, or they're just so distracted.
You know what it reminds me
they
of?
don't even hear what you're saying. What?
You know the people that go to the how to get rich quick or whatever those seminars are, like, yeah, and then they leave and they're like,
next thing, on to the next thing.
Yeah, they don't follow any of the advice that they paid to get.
It's the same word, but it just kind of fell on deaf ears. Then you have those, it falls on the rocky soil, and it springs to life, but there's no root. I mean, those are the ones who aren't grounded in what they should be grounded in. So it's the sun dries them out. They don't produce the fruit that is according to
and they can't, because they can't get the nutrition.
Right, they can't. Exactly, because they have no root system. Then you have the ones that fall on the thorns. Now they're rooted, but the riches of the world and the troubles and the tribulations come and end up choking it out.
That makes me think of the idea of, we talked about the inner, or the most holy place, and then moving out to the court.
Right.
Well, if you start at the holy place, then you move out your actions. But if you just start at the outer with the body, and it's not reflective of the heart, you're going to be choked out.
Right, and that's when you don't have the Torah written on your heart, because that's what's in the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
Is the Torah. In the heart of the ark is the Torah, which should be
written on our heart.
That's right. And if it is written on our heart, then our actions will start to look
right. It's the inside of the cup clean before outside
you clean the outside. Right. Absolutely. And then you have the ones who fall on the good soil. They receive it. They understand that it starts with repentance. It starts with cleaning out the inside first.
Right.
The root system is grounded in Torah, what it should be grounded in, and then it can produce the abundant fruit.
Right.
Which are the mitzvahs, which are your actions. So he also gives a very interesting phrase all throughout these parables. He says, those who have ears to hear.
Yeah.
You know, he says, he who has an ear, let him hear. Mm-hmm. Now, where do we hear that? Revelation 2 and 3 to the churches. Mm-hmm. Now, taking these parables by themselves, we make up all kinds of interpretations. But if you overlay the 7 parables with the 7 churches, you see something very interesting and peculiar. For example, I want to talk about the 4th parable that he talks about the woman who puts the leaven in 3 measures of leaven, and it says she does it secretly.
Yes.
Okay, that's key. Now, overlay that with the 7 churches, and what do you have? You have Thyatira. What is the key to Thyatira?
They eat the sacrifices to idols.
It's Jezebel.
Yeah.
Jezebel, what did Jezebel do? She brought in all of the pagan worship and idolatry into Israel. That's what Jezebel did. And then she forced the people of Israel to do it that way.
Right.
Or she enticed the king is what she did. So here you have the woman putting the 3 measures of leaven into the bread, and pretty soon it leavens the whole lump. Well, what do you see
leaven
today?
Does do that, yeah.
Right. What do you see today? The entire establishment of what is supposed to be representing the body is completely leavened with idolatry and, you know, our own feasts, our own celebrations. We're not doing it the Lord's way.
Right.
And if you back up 1 in 3, you have the mustard seed. That too, that's when it started. If you go look at Pergamos is when they put the stumbling blocks. It's the marriage. So yes, the mustard seed represents that beginning body, that beginning. It was so small compared to the rest of the sects in Judaism. It was the smallest one, but it grew into this enormous, just morphed tree because mustard trees were not supposed to grow into this big old tree. So then what do you see? You see birds perching all through the trees. Well, in the first parable, what did the birds do?
They stole the word of God.
Right. So now they're resting in it. They're bad too. So, right. In Jeremiah, the birds are bad. So now, but it doesn't say the bad birds or the unclean birds, because within it you have clean and unclean. We're all resting in that big tree. We all are. But some of us are moving our way down to the roots.
Yeah.
You know, we want to be a part of the root system, and we want to, and that's the one that
goes down where we don't go timber with
That's
it.
right, because pretty soon, that's exactly where I was going. Pretty soon, that is exactly what the Lord's going to do.
Yeah.
That tree, you know, the axe is at the roots, right? If you're in the roots, then you're good. But that tree, the whole establishment's coming down.
And in Ezekiel, he talks about the good and the dry and the green tree both go down.
That's right. Yes. Yes, so we want to nestle ourselves down and get down to the roots, or at least get as close to the roots as we can. For the people who have the good soil, who fall on the good heart, they produce a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. Now, there's all kinds of speculation what that stands for, but here's what I would propose. This is just Julie, and I think we've talked about this before, but if you were at that time living in Israel, living in Jerusalem, or wherever around, you could produce 100-fold.
Yeah.
You could. Your mitzvahs could be 100%. Now, let's think about us. We're not in the land, so there's so many mitzvahs we cannot perform because we're not there. Well, there are those who are in the land now, but there's no temple, so there's so many they can't. So 100,
now they're at 60.
Right. And here we're out of the land, we're at 30, but that's okay because he says to whoever's given a little, and you do produce the mitzvahs, you will be given more. So there is going to come a time where we will have the chance to produce more mitzvahs, more and more. And as we learn Torah, our lives do produce more.
Yeah. And I think that is a disservice of Christianity in the whole. Is we have been taught so much that rewards, don't worry about them. Yeah, we always want to talk about rewards, but we want to talk about rewards for a participation trophy, not for actually performing.
Earthly rewards. Yeah.
And I think that we've been robbed of the understanding of through our obedience, there is true reward.
That's right.
And that reward is drawing near to the Lord. Because the closer we can draw to the Lord, it's not that, that in itself is the reward. But then we end up being able to have things to give back to the Lord that we wouldn't have had. We don't even get as close. We don't have as much to give. Because we are told, you do not draw near. And this was in last week's Torah portion too. You do not draw near to the Lord without something to give. And that's Exodus 23. Don't come to the Lord.
So with each mitzvah, you will have crowns, jewels, all of these things, and they will be to give. That's right. We don't want to be empty-handed, just like you said. So after the fourth parable about the woman who ends up leavening the whole lump, he moves just to his disciples.
Yes.
You notice that? Mm-hmm. Then that's it. He goes inside, and then the disciples start asking questions. Said, do you understand these parables? They say yes. And then he tells more parables, and they're the more intimate parables. Mm-hmm. They're the treasure that's hidden in the field, and he goes and buys the field. Okay, well, that's representing the world. Right. And we're all through the world. Mm-hmm. He's already purchased that field so he can gather his treasure. Isn't that what's happening right now? He's gathering the treasure. And then we see the most intimate with the sixth one, which would represent the Church of Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. That would be the sixth church, where you see the pearl. He finds a precious pearl. That's the bride. Yeah. He finds the bride. And, I don't know. I just think that's really neat. And then you see the one at the very end where it's just, okay, just throw the dragnet out. Yeah. Just get all the fish. Just gather good, the bad, the ugly, the clean, the unclean, and then I will sort them out.
Right.
Right? So
that's
it's really neat how they line up with the churches.
With the churches.
And he keeps saying, for those who have ears, let them hear. And don't you find that once we got the understanding that Torah is for us today, and we begin to perform those mitzvahs as a service, as an act of love, don't you find that the understanding and the revelation and everything just started coming faster and faster? It's obedience must come first. That's my point. As we begin to walk out our salvation daily with fear and trembling, that's another thing I've really been thinking about this week is fear. Fear, I've seen lately that it's such a driving force. Mm-hmm. The things we fear the most are what come upon us, according to Job. Well, think about, that's why he said, he gave us the ability to fear.
He will come upon us.
Right. So think about if you fear the Lord and you fear what's his wrath, or you fear, disappointing him, or the fear of the Lord will bring that upon us. And I thought,
that's good.
That's why he did instill the ability to fear in us, so we can fear him, and through that fear of not wanting to disappoint, and that will bring us to repentance first, and then doing the mitzvahs, and that's what our walk is all about.
And then we can go into that private meeting and understand the parables, because we have the basis.
That's right.
And the key. We have the key to it.
Yes. I just thought that was really cool how he just introduced the more intimate ones to the disciples and not the masses, because it really is a narrow road, and there really is only a few that are going to find it. That's why I can't accept that the leaven is a good thing.
Right, no.
Because that doesn't line up with how it's going to end at the end of it.
Right.
And I can't accept that the mustard tree growing that big is a good thing. With the birds in it. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
Another thing, I know I'm jumping around with these parables, not really going in order, but on the second parable, you have the wheat and the tares. Yes. Or it's called the darnel. The darnel was said to have been a hybrid, the first GMO, basically.
Or at least the one that made it through.
Right. From before the flood. When everything, because if you look in Genesis, it says that the crops were corrupt.
Yeah, everything
was corrupted by the enemy, by the Nephilim, by the hybrids that were there. And this made it through. The seed of this made it through, and we see that again. Now, think about that. See, I kind of see these parables on a scale of when Yeshua was here up until the end. Mm-hmm. But I also see them even on a bigger scale as from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be people all through time that are in the reign of the kingdom. They're going to be there too. So this is really a much bigger, but yet it's also so personal, because me personally can see myself in all of these parables too.
Because you are a part of the body.
That's right. That's right. And so we see it on all different levels.
That's good.
And okay, so you have the wheat and the tares, but he says something very telling. At the end, he says he will send out his messengers to first gather the tares and throw them in the fire. Then he gathers the wheat and brings them to the barn. So that kind of messes up the rapture theory, that he takes the wheat out first and leaves the tares to be burned. He doesn't burn the field. Now, moving to Matthew 13:52, it says, "And he said to them, therefore every scholar taught in the reign of the heavens is like a householder who brings out his treasure, old, renewed and old." Well, isn't that the body and what was before Yeshua? I mean, the old and the new?
Right, yeah.
And the renewed? I mean, wouldn't that be the northern kingdom is the renewed? I mean, it's kind of a renewed covenant. So you have the old covenant and the new covenant brought together as one.
Right.
We're not separate.
Because it's not a replacement covenant.
That's right.
It's adding on to it.
That's right.
It's like I have a house and then I add a bedroom to it. That's the new addition.
And
but that's
we don't
not
ever
replace my house.
Right. We don't just... Right.
Yeah. You don't bulldoze your house.
That's right.
All I need to do is add a bedroom.
And then just live in the bedroom.
Yeah.
But that's what we've done.
I wish I had a bigger house.
That's really good.
Well, too bad you steamrolled it.
So basically, he who has the ears, let him hear. This is kind of what I saw when I was reading these 7 parables. You're a teacher. Yeshua would be the teacher, and you walk into a classroom and you say, okay, I want everyone to sit down, get your history book out, turn to page 220. You have some people in the back of the classroom that don't do anything. They just stand around. They don't do anything. They're just standing there. They kind of look at you and they're like, yeah, I heard. Okay. And then they're going to stand back there and discuss what you said. Okay. Then you have groups, they sit down, but they just talk amongst themselves. They're not paying any attention. They don't get their books out. Then you have some people who get their science book out because they don't feel like doing history. Then you have the ones who get their history book out, they turn to the correct page, they get their pen and paper out, and they're ready. Those are the students we want to be. They're all part of the classroom, but we want to be those students because all the other ones are going to hear this. You didn't listen to me.
Yeah. Well, guess
because listen really means to hear and obey.
Yeah.
So we want to be the kind of students that hear what the teacher says and obey the teacher, because more will be given. They're the only students that are going to understand the lesson and what's going on.
Who gets the A?
They do.
And then you know what?
Well done, good and faithful servant.
And all others hate on them. I can't believe you got an A.
Yeah. Oh. They try to make, well, you're just wrong for that.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to the hand. Or talk to the hand, whatever it is.
We're having way too much fun with this one this week. And here again, we see at the end of 13, he goes to his own town. They don't accept him. He doesn't do a lot of miracles there. And he says, and they stumbled at him, but Yeshua said to them, a prophet is not unappreciated except in his own country and in his own house. And isn't that the truth? You know, the ones that we know the best are the ones we tend to go, what? That doesn't make any sense.
God, there's no way God talked to them.
That's right. That's right. Okay, well, I think we've had way too much fun with this one this week. We're going to end on that note. So,
that's good because mine was so dry.
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of fun studying this one. I highly recommend go look at the parables in Matthew 13. Then go line them up with the 7 churches. You will see a lot of similarities and a lot of different interpretations to those parables that will play out. And the Lord will show you all kinds of things. You'll be all over the Bible after it's said and done. That's the goal. Yes. Yeah. And that is the goal. So, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a fantastic week, and we will see you next week with episode 33. Shalom.